Ooh, what's happening, man? Um, man, recently I talked about, or I've been talking about, um, a kind of like broad topic that isn't the entirety of what I'm researching, but it's come to represent a decent amount of it. Um, I was gonna say physical, but I guess there's some metaphysical to it too. So, I am an avid watcher of the Y Files. Literally just turned off the episode about the Knights Templar, right? Um, I've said this before, but I'm gonna say it again. I'm never gonna misrepresent myself as like, coming up with a topic all on my own, or I just happen to come out with this at the same time. Just like you, I watch stuff. Not trying to talk like I'm famous or anything, but I guess essentially I'm saying for those that watch this now, like, a day or two after I make it, or whenever, uh, I watched the show, and it tied in for me, so I'm going to talk about that and some of the things that I saw in it, and some of the things that I saw just today, because a lot of the time I make connections of things that maybe seem like they're not connected. Speaking of which, before I get into the Y-Files thing, I saw that a commission is renovating the pyramids. They are redoing the pyramids, like the face of the pyramids. And initially, when I saw that, I was like, that's fucked up. That's pretty fucked up. And mind you, I'm talking about the replica, the fake Egypt over there. Um, I call it that because there are many pyramids and mounds all over the world, but there are more of them in North America than in Egypt. There are also many, artifacts and relics that are being hidden by the Smithsonian in this country, including bodies, including mummies. Uh, there are reports of them eating them. Also, anyway, I might do something on that later, because that shit's fucked up. There's more to that story. But, if you doubt what I'm saying, go to the Grand Canyon. Go to that region and try to go to the areas they tell you not to go. See what happens. Um, yeah, I gotta talk about that. There's a lot of stuff involved in that. Anyway, so, um, Tim Hogan, Grandmaster of the Knights Templar, I didn't know this, but he is making claims that they are about to come out with information, historical information, and technologies that are going to help us all. And to be clear, the Knights Templar are the progenitors of Freemasonry, the Rosicrucians. The Knights Templar became the Gnostics. Um, I think that I'm clear when I say this every time, but then when I speak the way I do, I think it comes off as me, like many others, hating secret societies. I don't hate secret societies. I just don't like that we're in the times that we're in, and they're still opting to guard the light. They're still opting to keep the secrets occult versus, you know, doing what they started out um, to do. They started off wanting to improve all of this. Um, many of the tenets that I follow, the things that I believe, come from the Gnostics, aka the Knights Templar, Rosicrucians. I don't hate those orders. I just don't like what time has done to them and how they've allowed themselves to be represented publicly. You know, call it what you might. It may come from, parallels to gang shit or something like that, but there are certain beings that speak like they're a part of those orders, but they don't act like they're a part of those orders. You get what I'm saying? And I'm not just talking about phase one. There are others. False claiming, is what we call it. And and that's not to say necessarily that they haven't gone through rites or that they haven't been initiated or anything like that. It's just that their actions, the things that they say, don't, they don't, I keep wanting to say exemplify. That's not the word I'm looking for. They don't act like they're from those orders, for lack of the word that I can't think of currently. And that's important because, you become the face of those orders. If someone hasn't met anyone else or seen anyone else that's involved with the Rosicrucians, and they happen to come across a very specific Rosicrucians video that, one of those beings has put out, or a book that they've put out that's disingenuous or misleading, that really has an effect not only on the order that they, claim to be a part of, but on the effectiveness of their progress, of their plan. Because essentially, I support what they set out to do. I support what Tim Hogan says he's going to do. But I see lots of examples of behaviors in the overall, representations of those orders, and all the world's a stage, all that bullshit. Those things could be fake, but I think, as the Y-Files dude said, I think we're all getting this itch where we're all very tired. We're all very tired of how this is going. And speaking personally, it feels generational. Not to go into all that generational trauma shit that the influencers are selling people, but this exhaustion doesn't just feel like it's from this lifetime, I don't know how to say it any other way. It feels like it's compounded, like it comes from either other lifetimes or from past generations. I don't know. But it can sometimes feel like torture, And I think that's why a lot of us are searching the way we're searching for meaning. And if Tim Hogan's claims are true, then they hold the keys to potentially help that. Maybe not fix it, although they claim that it'll fix it, but help it, The things that Atlantis supposedly had, it sounds like, it sounds like an Eden. It sounds like, in the actual Eden, like the Edens that the Anunnaki set up. There wasn't just one Eden. There were Edens. these were outposts where they had everything they needed, while those that were outside of these Edens suffered. I and others believe that there are still Edens to this day, and they're very likely in places that we're not allowed to go to, which kind of lends to the theory of some of the Anuna being abandoned, left outside of the civilization that still, had the technologies and history to do much better than we're doing. And it's not to say that we haven't, as a civilization, made some leaps and bounds, but it seems very much like that was due to outside influence and help. It may not seem that way, but there's certain stuff that researchers have made very, very bold but provable claims, that we had help. And sometimes it wasn't even what it looked like, I'm not going to make a video about that because it's not my theory, and that one would just feel like stealing, But the theory is that, for instance, the crash site of 47 was more like bestowing materials and technologies. Here, take this shit, back engineer it, and clean yourself up type shit, And that makes a whole lot more sense to me than the stories that have been claimed, because I also think that many of the experiences that beings report, they sound very much like agency abduction. And there's, lots of evidence to back that up too by experiencers who go through regression. Anyway, watching this episode made me think of the concept that I've been talking about, where, again, there are histories, accounts, technologies, traditions that have been lost, but not completely. They are, being kept by specific groups, specific families. And while many think that there's some kind of evil connotation to that, for good reason, not saying there's not good reason for them to think that, I'm kind of coming around to the concept of, things aren't always what they seem in that sense. And while there are families that have done very wicked things, I think it kind of is just like anything else, where you have beings that want to do what's right, regardless of the implications of that, and then you have the opposite, And then, going back to the concept that all the world's a stage, I was listening to a podcast today, and I think it was Jason Brashears again. I've obviously been studying a lot of his shit because it's backed up. Like, I'm honestly kind of sick of hearing people's like metaphysical beliefs without works or experimentation or documentation. That gets really exhausting, and though I try my best to entertain the conversation that comes from comments having to do with that, I think some of you think it's like kind of like funny or something that I don't believe in a lot of metaphysical shit, but then I kind of do, and I get that it is kind of funny, but I'm just safeguarding myself, safeguarding my consciousness, like, not just gonna believe shit because 30,000 other people believe it. That's the opposite of what a truther is, like, it doesn't make any sense. But, was listening to a conversation, and, essentially he was talking about how the entire world's a stage, and how yes, there are some beings that do negative things, disagreeable things, but that some of those beings are kind of being the heel. They're playing the heel. They're being the necessary adversary, the necessary evil for potentially a bigger plan, a greater plan. I can't pretend to know what that would be, but if I had to suspect, I would say it has something to do with, this being some sort of test. And I still stick by my assertion that this is not the way a test should be, which denotes some kind of outside force interfering, showing up here and interfering maybe. But I could see that. I keep saying that it doesn't have to ruin your transmutation, that this place is fucked up. It doesn't have to make you halt your transmutation or your walk, I think that's important for everybody, is not letting anything at all make you give up. Because there are times for me, personally, where if I would have done that and listened to everybody around me, I would still be in prison, right? Yeah, I'd be getting out in some months. I'd be getting out soon, but I would still be in prison right now if I would have listened. Oh, you got 10 years? You might as well hang that up. They got you. You can't even imagine how many times I heard that. Over and over. Oh, they got you? 10 years. Oh, well, you're done. You're done. You're not getting out. Out in 3, Very, very happy to say that. Out in 3. It sucked, but then again, I used that time to start the person that I am now. That person began there. In a way. I was never not this person, to be honest. I'm not one of those people that's like, something just switched in me and I'm a completely just all the way different person now. That's not true. That'll never be true. I've always been kind of like this. But not awake, though. Almost kind of like I just knew something was up, but wasn't too concerned with what that was. I was just living life. That's different now, And none of this changes my plans. None of this kind of changes how I regard those that have seemingly targeted the few of us that there are. Because it feels like there's some kind of like bad blood, no pun intended, between us. Overall, my thought is still the same. That whole savior shit, I'm not with that, man. If the Anuna had some capability to help or to, make things better, or to, at the very least, not allow certain descendants to be attacked so mercilessly, physically and figuratively and metaphysically and all the other ways, then maybe I'd feel different. But I do believe they have the capability to intervene, and I do believe that they choose not to. And maybe there's a reason for that, but I don't know the reason for that. So until I'm told the reason, I feel the way that I feel. And I have to trust that, because it comes from deep within me, that whole turn the other cheek shit never resonated with me. That's kind of one of the reasons that I decided to go ahead with that Black History Month video, which is not doing well. The Black History video is not doing well, It's not doing terrible, but it's not doing usual. And maybe that's just like others not really concerned with the whole, race thing or whatever. That's fine. Had to get it out though. I had to get that video off. I think about the technologies that are in the Enuma Elish and in various texts that kind of explain these things, including the Bible. There are technologies that are talked about in these religious and historical texts, and they're just described. They're not outright, there's a spaceship, it's not like that. They don't talk like that. They don't know what fucking space is because it's not real. You know what I mean? So they're not going to say spaceship. Flying machine, they could maybe say that, but they don't say that shit either because that's not how they talk. I've said this, I and others have said this many times, like, if they were going to talk about technology like that, they would call it a flying fucking chariot, because when they get in something and move around, it's a chariot, But the countless claims and accounts of things that are potentially within these essentially time capsules, for lack of better terminology, because I don't really like that. I believe it exists. I believe it exists, and I don't do that very much. I don't really say shit like that. But at the same time, though, as far as how I research goes, or how I research things, when there is corroborating text over and over again, even if it's slightly different, but talking about essentially the same shit, many times that has to be enough for me, because, I'm not close enough to 1902 to be able to corroborate all that shit with, like, pictures and stuff. But there are enough accounts, there are enough reports, and physical, geological evidence, at least, to prove these things. And all this stuff is connected, and much of the time these are just words that we're using, and to try to connect the dots of these things is very difficult. That's why, if I do find a researcher that has good work, good researched and evidentially, wow, that's a big one, evidence-backed, let's call it that, evidence-backed research, I just go with that. Because am I gonna waste energy making sure that being's already checked work is right, or am I going to look for the corroboration and say, okay, all that checks out, so that's coming in with me? Because essentially, though I might try to publish something at some point, or I might try to have my work recognized in some kind of way, maybe not academic, but in some kind of way, this is that, I don't have to go the route of, the common academic. I don't have to worry the same way that they do about being called plagiarists, because I'm crediting my sources, I'm citing my sources, even if it's somewhat difficult at times, like Jason Bashir's shit. I'm citing my sources, I'm crediting my sources, and I'm telling you why I'm using them as sources, rather than going through the process of reading all the books he's read and all the shit he's done. I don't need to do that, because I've checked his work. To make sure, that this date matches, or that this book talks about this topic, or that this math works out in the chronology, and it works. There are others too. Rod Hayes, another one. I'm not going to go back and do all the work that Rod Hayes has done. Why the fuck would I do that? Now that I have their work to reference from, I have head start, or, I'm farther ahead in the game. Fuck a head start. But this leads me to something I've been thinking about lately, which is cyclical civilization. There are instances of things within entertainment, in movies. And I don't use them as documentation, but I do love, using them to help me think, because you and I both know they put shit in movies and TV for whatever reason they do. But it helps me to realize things, to have epiphanies and realizations. One of them comes from the Book of Eli, which is a very good movie. If you haven't seen it, you definitely should, but it's been a very long time, so I am going to spoil it. I think the Book of Eli makes sense to me as a prequel. When I watched it, when everyone watched it initially, you kind of view it as post-apocalyptic from now, when really it just says post-apocalyptic. It doesn't say what time frame, if I'm not mistaken. It has references in it, like there's an old iPod that he carries around, right? And the military garb that they wear at the end and things like that, but that doesn't matter either. If you really know how this place works, none of this shit is new. I don't think any of this is new. And you can see hieroglyphs and things like that that reference things that we think are potentially fake, or we think are, staged. But what if they're not? Like, what if the hieroglyphs of tanks and, helicopters and things like that are real, and these things are just cyclically returning, over and over again? Which is why when I saw that they were essentially rejuvenating, let's call it rejuvenating, the pyramids, I'm like, why would you need to do that? And then my first thought was, well, if you wanted a new civilization to find these revamped pyramids and maybe restart the whole process over again and trying to understand what they are, you maybe would want them to look a little better. And that kind of freaked me out a little bit, And I'm pretty regularly saying, I don't know what year it is. You don't know what year it is. You don't know what you actually are. You don't know who you actually are. So on and so forth. And watching them do things like redo the pyramids, I'm sure many people will just be upset that they're disturbing an archaeological site. But what goes through my head is, that's disturbing. It's disturbing that you are doing that, because there are other implications that are potentially there. When you look at the many, many, many environmental things that are happening right now, they choose now to redo the pyramids. Do you get what I'm saying? It's telling. And it ties to things that I feel like many wouldn't think tie to each other, like they're redoing the pyramids. Many rich people are selling off all their shit, including houses, and building bunkers. Like, something's being prepared for. Something's being prepared for. And rather than everyone noticing that, they're all concerned with fake wars. With, staged wars. Real deaths. Real deaths, don't get me wrong, but staged wars. Doesn't it ever occur to anyone that if they were really that hot at each other, they would just decimate each other in a week? We have the technology to do. It's not fucking 1731. They're not fighting with swords. If they really gave a fuck like that, they would just knock each other the fuck down. It's a play. We're watching plays and arguing over them. Meanwhile, while we're watching this hand, they're doing a bunch of weird shit with this hand over here. And it's strange. It's strange to notice all these things and to keep having to like do regular shit every day that I don't give a fuck about. And it's even more strange when I try to talk to people about it and they're like, they don't get what I'm saying. It's very confusing to me. But it's not. I mean, it's not at the same time. We've discussed why some of us think they're like that. You know, someone told me a different interpretation of that terminology I've been trying to not use, NPC, non-personal character. No. Non-personal consciousness. And they said that, and I was like, ooh, that's smooth, though, because that's way more on point for kind of how I view that. Non-personal consciousness. And I can't get away from it. As much as I'm trying to not offend those that maybe don't have the inner dialogue or monologue, you know, or they don't, you know, they have to, like, talk. They have to talk out loud to read. Their dreams are weird compared to ours. Like, I'm trying to not be a dick about that, but it's still creepy, dude. And I'm starting to also kind of make a delineation between empathy. They lack empathy. They're cruel beings, whether they mean to be or not. They're not nice people. And it's disturbing, you know? Not just speaking with my own personal situations and tribulations, just generally watching them interact with other beings and the things that they do, it's fucked up, you know? Watching anyone with a lack of empathy is always giving me like a hair standing on end feeling. I can't, it makes me uncomfortable physically. What's up, Orphic? I'm wondering so much lately if any of the truthers on YouTube are staged or like characters, it seems. Look, most. Most. I've unsubbed a whole lot lately. I hear people say certain shit, and I'm like, oh, I gotta go. And I can't listen to you anymore because maybe I noticed this, but there's probably other shit you're saying that's has the potential to influence me in a way that I don't want, you know? So, in my humble opinion, many. Yeah, you know, Instagram does weird filters on stuff, but generally, when I go back and look at the recording, it's fine, so I just power through it. It's alright. Um, yeah, it snaps back and forth. Man, I was having a conversation with someone earlier today about this phenomena that, you know, is not provable by any means. You just have to, if you're subject to it, you know it, you know. uh it's like being held in a certain position, held in a certain state where you can't really affect change within your own experience, let alone help others very much. Not on any significant level, anyway. You can give a couple bucks to a homeless person or something like that, or volunteer somewhere, and those things are admirable. But we weren't talking about that. We were talking about how you see some who, you know, their business jumps off and they're able to get a few acres and do stuff with that, or they start a nonprofit and claim to do this and that. Just things that we would potentially be interested in, but we notice not only are those things not potentialities, but we're like kept from even building to those things. very weird to notice, and it's compounded by the fact that it's like another one of those things where if you describe it to certain beings, most beings, they think you're just like overthinking it or something like that. It's very much like the whole, if you tried to explain the Agent Smith thing to someone that just doesn't have that experience, they'd be like, what? What are you talking about? But if you've been through one of those, you know how creepy it is. It's almost not describable. Um, it's it's strange, you know. Going back to what she just said, like, and she's asking like why would they have all of these influencers and things like that faking stuff. I mean, obviously the point is to, if this is all a conglomeration of plays and stages and so on and so forth, then the audience holds some sort of importance. And what we decide, what we believe, what we do also holds some sort of importance. And so if you need to affect that many consciousnesses and that many opinions, then your best bet is to post up a bunch of fake people and have them mislead and misguide and dissuade chaos agents. That just reminded me, I'm going to do a video on chaos agents. I need to write that down because I really want to do that. People think I'm just saying something from fucking Batman or from what's that Once Upon a Time in Mexico. But that's not like a movie concept. That's a very real thing. That's a job. They pay people to do that. Just go in and disrupt civilizations or countries or cultures or races. They give them resources. They give them new identities, backgrounds. It's weird stuff, nasty stuff. Yeah, man, this may seem like it's coming out of left field, but again, I think, though I am always going to be looking into the metaphysical and stuff, I've kind of been bombarded lately with a lot of theories and proposed things that don't have any basis in evidentiary backing. And while I'm not trying to say that anyone should not pursue their spirituality or to try to understand this place personally, I'm trying to be as honest with myself as I can on certain aspects of this experience not being answerable. Because a lot of what I've been, kind of having directed at me lately is not just theories, but like they're almost like pitches, like pitching theories at me to try to like make me believe them. And they get like noticeably upset when I don't believe them, or when I don't entertain them is a better way to say it. Like if I don't start to like, you know what, yeah, that does kind of make sense, they get noticeably aggressive. And while I understand that may make them feel a way about what they believe, I also don't understand. Because if someone tries to tell me that something that I am passionate about doesn't exist, then I'm just going to say to them, well, man, that's for you to not believe and for me to believe. I don't understand that whole dynamic. You know? I don't understand that whole dynamic. I really like sticking to the things that either I can prove or like a good theory that I can dig into that isn't 100% testimonies. Like one of the things earlier today was near-death experiences. Someone was trying to get me to be into near-death experiences. And when I said back to them, they were not happy about that shit. They were not happy about that. Because from my perspective, you know, frequency and technology are much farther along than many are willing to accept. Put it like this: there are companies that are saying out loud that they are looking into advertising in your dreams. They are going to show you McDonald's commercials in your fucking dreams. You know? Does it seem like it's out of the realm of possibility that maybe they're fucking with your near-death experiences also? Or your dreams, your regular dreams? If they can put a commercial in your dream, doesn't that mean they can just fuck with the dream itself? You know? So like, and that one's personal for me because I had very specific dreams that were leading me to some like self-discovery shit, and then nothing. Blocked. And it feels enforced, like it feels imposed. It doesn't feel like I'm just not dreaming. It feels like I'm being kept from dreaming. And a bunch of other personal shit too, man. You know, you gotta go with what's happening with you. I don't discuss some of it because I'm not gonna argue with anybody about the shit that I'm having happen to me. You know, why would I do that? You're not gonna talk me out. You're not gonna talk me out of what's happening to me. I don't even understand the urge to do that. It's like me trying to do that to you. It's not worth it to do. So I just, you know, again, I was going to put that stuff on the Patreon, but I don't even know if I'm going to do the Patreon anymore. I don't know if it's worth it. They fucked around with it pretty intensely. Donations, I guess, are what I'm going to have to try to go with for a while. And I'm a long way from that amounting to anything, so not really going to focus on that stuff. I will say, one of the reasons that I look through all those patents and shit is because I'm looking for signs of those technologies that seem out of place. Like, imagine being in the 50s and finding the patent for radar or finding the patent for microwave technology. You know what I mean? The shit probably seemed like magic to them. And I have a feeling, and I'm seeing evidence of that happening again soon. Just an explosion of what the fuck type stuff. Soon. Because the signs are there. And, you know, there's the past times that this has happened, and this isn't the 138-year cycle, this is early. You could say, oh, well, maybe they're preparing early, but look at the other stuff that's going on, you know? And it's not to say whatever happens next that's substantial or that's very out of the ordinary, something just crazy looking, doesn't necessarily mean it's real. It could be staged, or we could be in just completely different times. There have been many of the kind of more love and light or left-hand path channels that both assert that this is the end of an age. If this is an end of an age, then doesn't that signify something different happening? You know, do they have to adhere to the 138 years, or can they start early, or can they do more than one event? I'm not a firm believer in rules anyway, because if that were true, much of what happens, just generally speaking, wouldn't happen because they're against the rules, you know? So those that kind of like, there's a few that get mad at me for talking shit about cosmic law and stuff. Just show me an example of it being adhered to. I don't want to debate with you. Just show me an example of it being adhered to, and I'll stop saying it. You know? I'll stop saying it then. Earlier I brought up the resources thing and kind of being kept from progressing in resources and capability and stuff, because lately I've really been thinking about that whole addition to my plan to just go down there, you know? Because it really makes sense to me, especially when I started using the examples. Like, everything that is shown to you is supposed to kind of endow you with wonderment when you look up, when you consider up. Space, it's beautiful. There's a bunch of room for everyone. There's millions of planets for us to look for a new home and all this other bullshit. The sky is blue, it's so beautiful. The heavens are above. But then when you think about below, everything you're told about going down is bad. You know? Hell, tectonic plates, earthquakes, monsters, just all kinds of shit to be like, oh, well, down is bad. Obviously, down is bad. And I am kind of like a contrarian from experience. In my experience, things are inverted. So the shit that gets pushed at you, there's probably something wrong with that. The shit that is attempted to be hidden from you, it's probably truth and potentially good for you. So when I apply that to as above, so below, not only do I get a difference of theory, because I think this is the above where we are, the below is below us, A, and then B, we don't even, we can't see any above. We just have stories and CGI pictures and failed rocket launches and not dead astronauts that are not actually dead and going by the same names actually, because there's like a whole bunch of them that are just alive. So being that I'm kind of impatient, I kind of want to go down and check it out, see what's going on down there. You know what I mean? See what's going on down there. Yeah, I've thought about that too, that we are the below. And I think there's a potential for both to be true, actually. I've talked about that. I think there are some that believe we're on kind of like, almost like the floors of a building as far as dimensions go, or planes. Not dimensions, planes. Let's say planes. They believe that we're on a plane, and there's a plane above this one, and there's a plane below this one, and keeps going in both directions. I'm not gonna shoot that down. That actually could be very possible, because all you need is for this to be much more vast than we're being told, and the fact that there is not only an atmosphere but a firmament that wouldn't keep it from there being like more shit above that. It would just mean it's way higher than you think it is. And that would make more sense to me than fucking space does, to be honest. You know? The physics of space just don't make sense, dude. There's all this shit that you're just supposed to believe, or you're supposed to, like, give them that. Like, oh, we're spinning real fast, and no one's dead. No one's flying off. Nothing bad's happening. And the explanations of that are stupid. I'm sorry. Not a flat earther or anything. But I'm also not a fucking heliospheric person either. Heliocentric. I think those are. I don't even think that matters, honestly. When I really get down to it, like, does it? Does it matter? Mm-mm. I do think, though, that there are enough stories about not going below that at the very least, I want to see what's below. Because I've seen what happens when you try to go up, and it's blowing up or ending up in an ocean somewhere. As a matter of fact, someone has very plainly said that the Bermuda Triangle is just where all those rockets end up, and that's why you're not supposed to go there. And that makes sense to me, you know? That makes sense to me. But, I mean, the reason I talked about the Knights Templar and all that stuff was because uh, the episode of the Y-Files started off with a story that was told to the Grand Master at the time of the Knights Templar, who, then decided with 8 others, to make the Knights Templar. And it was a story about Atlantis. And every time I hear that story, I get this feeling in my head where it's like, okay, this is just to make you feel hopeful that there could be a civilization like this again. But, that's an expert level of nefariousness that I don't think is potentially, the case. I do think that there has been a society like that. I do think that there was a civilization like that, and I'm hoping that I'm not hoping that I can affect that kind of change. Honestly, I want to go down. Something is making me feel as though it's important and that it will answer some things for me. And I might be able to do some stuff. And that's good enough for me, to be honest. I've got enough contextual evidence, and I'm trusting my intuition there. It just would be cool if things would kind of get going, Feels like this is moving at a snail's pace, even though everyone keeps trying to say to me, time's going by fast, huh? You know what? And it is, in a way, but it's also not. Like, the days go by fast, but there are just more days after that, so that's all relative, I guess, Yeah, I'm rambling, so I'm gonna kick rocks, you know what I mean? I may come back and talk about one of those other things. Chaos Agents, and what was the other one? Chaos Agents. Fuck, I forgot the other one. I gotta watch this back now. Okay, love you, bye.